false economy on revenue numbers. It's like, that's great, but where's the profit and where's the cost of sales and where are your margins? And that's where they kind of go, gosh, I don't even know what our highest margin product is and what our lowest. Like level 10 meetings are always probably the biggest growing pain for clients. But the scorecard to me is what tells me they're absolutely running their business and the business is not running them.
So good morning and welcome to another episode of Better Business, Better Life. Today I am joined by the delightful Sheilah Hogan, who is a professional EOS implementer based over in Sydney, in Australia. And Sheilah joined the team about a year ago, I think it was, and we immediately hit it off. And so we decided we had to have this podcast and talk about some of our mutual experiences. Welcome to the show, Sheilah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Very excited to be here.
It's going to be great. Hey, so tell me a little bit about how did you become an EOS implementer? What's your journey to get to where you are today?
It's a great journey because I found my way to my people and just the core values. But I'm a serial entrepreneur from the young age of I think 30 when I started my first business in New York City. I've really just grown up among people advisors because I was young. I made sure that I was always seeking out people that had gone before me and really leveraged their wisdom, their failures, their wins, their key nuggets of tips and tricks, and it got me a long way. And so I built a business in the States. Then in 2010, about 2 years after the financial crisis, moved to Australia and continued to. I didn't want to start another business because I was tired. I had 3 young children. I'd moved across the world. I was living in a foreign country. I wasn't ambitious enough to say, I know what I'm doing here. And I just started getting a lay of the land. So what I did instead is I started helping other people run their businesses. So over the course of the past, 10 years, 11 years, I've helped 3 different companies, run smoother, grow faster, build an infrastructure. It's something that I love to do. I'm a natural integrator. And what I found is that while I loved helping people be successful and find freedom and success in their life, I was going, what am I doing? I'm, helping them be successful and I need to do my own thing again. So when I turned 50, I did a lot of self-reflection. It was that year of, all right, what do I want to be doing the next 10, 20 years? And it's time to get back out there. It's time to do my own thing, be my own boss, make my own success. And I looked internally. And over the course of time, I looked back on what I was doing here, who I liked spending my time with, what were my unique strengths and things that I love to do that I'm great at. And it was building businesses. It was helping people understand where the issues were and how to unlock those issues and find solutions. And it became quicker and quicker that you could see things and then get it to the other side. So I realized I didn't want to start a business. I didn't want to build something from scratch. I'd done it. And I really liked that there were a few models out there that I had implemented when I was running those businesses for other people, family-run businesses, a bunch of college roommates that were geniuses and started a great tech company and just growing crazy. And I thought, who do I like? Why do I like them? Who do I want to work with? And one of the businesses I implemented, EOS and Roger and Pat were my implementers and just loved them. So I called them on my journey of exploration of what the next thing would be. And I said, tell me what you're thinking, what you think of the idea. And they're like, oh, you've got to come join EOS. And it took me a long time because I'm a high fact finder. So I did my heavy duty research. I was going to make sure that this wasn't, whimsical, new launch. And I interviewed 15 of the 22 implementers here in Asia Pacific at the time, including my vivacious Deb, and 2 other models that I had been introduced to. So, competitive analysis, did my Excel spreadsheet, but resounding, yes, the model I loved and I had implemented it twice and seen huge results in a very short amount of time. So I knew it worked and I loved the IP. but I also liked the autonomy that it allowed for me to be me. But the other tipping point was the community, like
Yeah.
the people. The EOS community worldwide is absolutely living up to everything that I researched. Everybody, they brought it, and I was like, these are my people.
Yeah.
So long story short, that's it. It's not only the model that I've actually implemented myself into businesses and seen the results. So I deliver it with authenticity and conviction,
Hmm.
but the community,
Yeah.
people like you and I, Deb, we are aligned in our core values and our hopes and health first
Yeah.
intention.
Absolutely. It's probably part of the reason I kind of fell in love with it too, is that it's definitely the people. But I think also, as you said, it's like there are lots of frameworks and models out there, and they're all really good. So there's nothing wrong with any of them. But some of them just get a little bit too complicated. And I think for entrepreneurs, we need a little bit of structure. But if you try and restrain us too much, we just throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's too hard. I don't want to do this.
Yep,
So I love the
absolutely.
simplicity of it, that it was able to give us a framework, a structure without being too restrictive.
And some people think it looks a bit too simple, so they're
Mm,
skeptical. And I go,
yeah.
it has to be simple. Business is complex enough. So
Yeah.
trust that it's simple but not easy.
Yeah. It's actually really funny. It's I did Outward Bound many, many years ago. Well, not many, probably about 8 years ago. I was the fattest, oldest person on Outward Bound, and when I finished it, I was so proud of myself. They asked did I want to actually have a brick inscribed that could go and be put into the Outward Bound grounds. And my brick actually said it was simple but not easy, and it's like that has now followed me through in my life and everything that I do. So yeah, cool. So that was a little while ago that you joined us. What are the things that you have been most proud of in the last couple of years of your life that you've achieved, or of your whole life?
Listen, I think being winning the Entrepreneur of the Year award when I was 37 years old in New York City, New York State, which is probably one of the most competitive islands in the world. So
Yes.
it was a real, and I was shocked. Okay,
Oh.
so you go through the process and you're going, we've got some steep competition. We're really, really lucky to be part of the process and nominated, etc. I was actually here on holidays in Australia in July in the snow at Threadbow, and the awards were being given in New York and we won, and I fell off my chair. I just couldn't believe it. So it was a real eye opener that, never think other people can do it better than you, or that you're not, shining, because if you're not if you don't give it a go, you never know. And I think
Hmm.
I'm constantly looking at times like that I put myself out of my comfort zone and shared a little bit about myself and was vulnerable, and great things happen as a result of it. So that's probably one of my big claims to fame, is that
Yeah.
that's huge.
Oh,
That's something
congratulations.
that
Yeah.
it's not it's a little bit of validation, and it keeps you going, and it keeps reminding you that keep pushing.
Yeah.
So that was purely based on innovation. I'm a tech geek. So that was a big moment in my career. And then the next big sliding doors moment was I'm married to an Australian, and when we got married, young and ambitious, and he was living in New York, and we had to have those discussions of where are you gonna raise your children, where are you gonna have children, where are you
Hmm.
gonna raise them, you have two different countries that you call home, so what's the plan? You have to make that. So, and I quickly said, listen, I love Australia. I've done Ohio. I've done 40 winters in my life. I'm really happy with the idea of raising our children and having a life in Australia. It's a beautiful country, beautiful people. Well, 12 years later, 3 kids later, and a business, my first baby, which was, at that point, 150 employees, 7 locations, just the pride and joy of what I'd never imagined what could be. And, Mick said, it's time. It's time. Our kids are 5, 3, and 2. We're going. It's time. And I was like, oh, did we agree on that? It was really hard because I had to, you can recreate your business and career, but you can't recreate the father of your children and your husband, So it was a moment that the choices had to be made. And that was a really hard time. So that was 2 years of unraveling our life and realizing I'm moving to a foreign country, and yeah, I'm going
Mm.
to call it home, but it's not necessarily home right away. So that was big.
Yeah.
But could not, to this day, is like, you can thank me again. Because
Hmm.
it's not that we waited until we were 60 to start enjoying our dream together. We left at 40 and we left a lot behind. But we did it all for the right reasons. And I guess that'll bring me one of those tips is, keep an eye on your why.
Yeah.
Because when things are really difficult and they don't feel comfortable and they're not clear, you got to go back to your why and
Mm.
what's important and your core values. So that was another big, that's what I'm proud of, that we're
Yeah.
here and thriving and living a beautiful life in a beautiful country, and our children are thriving. And I've got a career and a business here.
That's fantastic. I'm really pleased. It is a biggie. And having moved countries twice, I appreciate how big that actually really is. Yeah. Okay, so we were talking before we came onto the podcast, and you mentioned that you wanted to share some of your experiences around kind of stress and overwhelm, because it's probably something that I think, particularly after 2 years of a pandemic, people are starting to feel tired. They are feeling stressed, overwhelmed. But even in day to day in business, this can actually kind of sneak up on us, and before you know it, we're burnt out. So tell us a little about your story.
Well, as I mentioned, I had a talent agency. It was a staffing agency, but it was a talent agency for fashion design and graphics and home furnishings in the States, in New York. And, it grew very, very quickly. And then the financial crisis hit in 2008, and it affected everybody. And living in New York, we had friends and clients that they Bear Stearns gone. Literally
Mm.
things that you never thought you would ever see that we were witnessing. And so there was the highs, but then you really understand what it takes during the lows. And I think that um, being vulnerable and making sure that you know that you don't need to do this alone is one of my biggest lessons. As I said early on, when I was young, I was like, I don't know everything. I have the energy, I have the conviction to start this business and grow this business. But at the end of the day, I need advisors, people that have gone before me, to make sure that I don't trip. And I also need to people that, when my courage and confidence was dwindling, I needed to go and borrow it
Mm.
from people that I trusted. So I'm constantly engaging with leaders, type A, entrepreneurial people that think that they have to carry it all on their own shoulders. I'm the leader. It's my business. It's all on me. And I go, no, it doesn't have to be. You have a choice there. And I think the whole stress and overwhelm is so, so real, no matter, not even if you're holding a high executive job or you're running a business. If you have people reporting to you, depending on you, their salaries are reliant on decisions that you make, there is a massive burden that can either be shared or carried, and it's not sustainable. So I
Mm.
always, when I talk about EOS, and before I knew EOS, I always was very outspoken about, do you have someone to talk to?
Mm.
Personal, professional. Who are you talking to? Do you have an inner circle? Do you have a coffee group? Do you have a mentor group? Do you have an advisory board? So I think that whole reducing stress and overwhelm is something that we always have to be talking about,
Mm.
because it's constant, whether it's on a small level or an epic level like the pandemic, which is something no one ever saw coming. Financial crisis, there's all this talk about the economic downturn in the coming year. Everybody takes that on, but you have to make sure that you find coping mechanisms, that you share the load,
Mhm.
um, you borrow, and seek out support for courage and conviction and guidance when that happens. And there's just so many ways to do that. It's just a matter of finding the the courage to be vulnerable and to
Mm.
ask for the help, or at least seek it. And I guess, again, that crosses between personal and professional, career, business, you name it. It's finally what people are talking about, especially for men.
Yeah.
um, you know
Sometimes it's a little bit like the frog in the boiling pot of water, right? It's building up on you, but you don't notice it. So, what are the kind of signs that you can look for to know that you are starting to get stressed, overwhelmed, potentially burnt out? What are the things people should be looking at to establish that?
other people can observe it in you, or you hear you saying there's not enough hours in the day. You always hear
Yeah.
that there's just not
Mm.
enough hours in the day. That's always the telltale sign that they're holding on to too much.
Yeah.
In any or every way, it's a place to start. Or
I'm busy.
yeah, I'm just too busy. I haven't had a holiday. I so many throwaway phrases that you just hear and you go, that's why we need to make time most of all.
Mm.
It's just I'm on traveling way too much. I think travel, when you look at the amount of people used to travel, it was a very telltale sign that um, it was just their life was being taken. That they weren't running their life was running them.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd ask a few questions, but I always love the old, oh, there's not enough hours in the day. My business is growing faster than I can keep up, or I just don't, I'm stuck. I'm
Yep.
stuck. Nothing I'm doing seems to be making a difference. Or um, their body language. I think we were talking about like the top 10 signs of really listening to how people, listening and watching. It's not what they say, it's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So their actions and their body language, you can tell energy levels if you actually tap in. You go, oh, their energy levels are, they don't have anything left in the tank, but they keep running.
Yeah.
They're unhealthy and they make unhealthy choices. So I've been there.
I was gonna
I
say, well,
recognize it because
I was
I've
sitting there
been
going,
there.
yeah. I was sitting there going, mm-hmm,
It's like,
mm-hmm,
oh, that was me in
mm-hmm.
2012 and that was me in 2017.
Yeah, yeah. And if I'm honest, it's actually a little bit of me right now. I mean, we're coming up to the end of the Christmas, the end of the year and Christmas, and I've been doing a lot of travel, and it's the unhealthy choices. I just know that I'm feeling exhausted, which is not like me. I'm usually very full of energy. So, yes, I'm reaching out and kind of going, hey, I need some, and I booked myself in for some self development in January, which I think will be really helpful as well. So, yeah. Okay, look for the signs, reach out, ask for some help. But what about this fear of, but nobody can do things as well as I can, and if I let it go, as you said, if you're the owner of the business, you're often it's my responsibility. I need to make sure all these people are being paid. What would you say to that?
It- it's not, again, it's not sustainable, and there is a glass ceiling. There is
Mm,
only so much you can do in the time given, and there's only so much that you're actually good at. And
yeah.
that, to the degree that I really pull the red carpet right out from under them. And I say, well, obviously, you're not working to your strengths, and that's not a good strategy. Has anyone told you the business strategy is actually the best leader is those that empower others to do the work? You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's just a matter. I always ask what books they're reading, because I think you either have the art of war or it's servant leadership, or on that spectrum. But I always say the most strategic leaders are those that don't do the work, but empower, delegate, elevate those around them, and they build an army of people that will never leave them,
Mm,
because they're letting them do the work that they're best at and you're not great at, and staying in a successful environment. So it's shedding the light on a life that could be, and why it's validated, and why it's actually not a weakness, but it's a more strategic way of living your life.
mm,
True leadership is empowering others and getting the most out of them, and letting them work to their unique abilities, where they're not your unique abilities. We in EOS talk about the four quadrants, and sometimes if I have a whiteboard handy, I go there. Is this something that you love and you're good at, and how much time are you spending in the areas of, I'm maybe good at it but I hate doing it, or I'm not even good at it and
and
I
I
don't
hate
like
it.
doing it.
Yeah.
So um, you just try to shed the light on how there's people, really strategic leaders in the world, very successful, doing a 4-hour work week. It's real. It can be real. It's just a matter of choosing to let go.
Yeah.
And that's a big process. So showing them how it could be, and that that's not a weakness. It's actually quite smart.
Mm. And that's part of what the EOS framework does, though. It also gives you the tools to have the confidence to let go as well, right? So we've got everybody on the same page in terms of the vision, where we're headed, who we serve, what we're doing, but also more importantly, having those kind of data and the measurables in place so that you can measure how we're doing against that. And you can start to understand people actually do genuinely GWC their role and can do what is required of them.
And being just pleasantly surprised that people are happy to step up, step in,
Yes.
and support you and want to help and give it to me. I can do
Mm.
that. I can do that in half the time that it takes you. And
Yeah. And I love
so
it.
I've seen a lot of aha moments in the vision building days. Focus days are really hard.
Oh,
Those
yeah.
are interesting with spending a lot of time and looking at the organization. What is a traditional organizational chart and flipping it around, doing it in an accountability chart. That's a real mind shift that I see happen a lot, and people kind of go, there's a lot of one name in a lot of boxes. There's one name in a lot of these boxes. And that means we're going to be a very slow road to where we want to get to, because their capacity is completely overextended. So when you start fleshing out how some people are holding on to too much, and then you put it in a very practical, you know, two-dimensional layout, and they kind of go, yeah, that's maybe I shouldn't put my name in that box and that box and that box. So it really does surface misalignment of, but
Yeah.
you want to get here, but you're holding all of these roles and responsibilities. There's a big gap
Mm-hmm.
between where you want to get to and how much capacity or incapacity exists in the current working relationships. So I love the tools that do the work for you, because it just,
Mm-hmm.
the information surfaces without you being, questioning. It just comes out. The truth
Yeah.
is always in the room, if people are honest and they're doing it together. Yeah.
Yeah, as I say, the focus day is usually quite tough because it does challenge your thinking around a whole lot of things. But then there's also like this level of clarity by the time that they leave that room, that things need to change, and there's a willingness to actually start thinking about how that can change to achieve the results. And then, of course, vision building days are beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love the physical changes I see in the room when they kind of realize, like, I've got really capable people in this room,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually want and have the interest to do things that I can't stand doing. So it's
Yeah.
beautiful to see it, but it's a really heavy 7 hours sometimes.
Yeah, and sometimes longer. I had one team I was actually working with. Yeah, we were there for around about, I think it was 11 or 12 hours. It was a long day. We spent 6 hours on the accountability chart. I mean, it was, and it had to be done. I mean, did I want to leave earlier? Of course I did, but no, we had to get to the outcome in six. You can't without that. Yeah, yeah. So it's good. Yeah. And of course, it's always followed by the next 2 days, which are much more about the future and getting people on the same page and ensuring that we've got that plan to achieve that future goal as well, which I think is a lot more enjoyable for most people. But it also still has its moments, right? You get those teams who have aha moments in terms of finally clearly articulating, what those core values are and what their core focus is and what their big, hairy, audacious goal or 10-year target is. And I love seeing those moments.
Yeah, I think that people get to know the people they've been working with sometimes for 5, 6 years more in those days and those activities, and then it's a big leapfrog forward of
Yeah.
having the important conversations. It's the important conversations, and
Yes.
are we all on the same page? Absolutely not. We are absolutely not on the same page,
Yep.
and it's great because that discovery is like, okay, now I
Yeah.
get it. Now I get why we're all running different races and we're not running together. So
Mm-hmm.
that's another aha moment when they realize that we are not on the same page.
Yep.
And it's not a bad thing. It's just a really big learning.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity because then you have a chance to actually deal with it. Yeah. Whereas often that disparity lives inside people's minds, but they don't realize there's a disparity. Yeah.
I started my first journey was coaching executives and individuals and entrepreneurs. And I realized that it's a short stop.
Mm.
You can absolutely enhance people and their confidence, etc., and give them the tools. But if they're not doing it with the people they're working with, the level of traction is just a little bit stop, start, stop, start, because there's so many. And that's why I love EOS, is because the difference is you've got a team, And
Mm-hmm.
instead of coaching the CEO or the COO and then trusting that they're bringing it back into the business and doing it in a way that's pure or just educational, is that's it's blurred. It's very blurred. So I no longer take those individual clients that are looking for the one-to-one coaching, because I say, you know what, the best gift you can give yourself is to do this with your team real time, and let me do the heavy lifting and carry everyone through it. And you sit down and be part of your team and participate and just follow and trust the process. But everyone's learning in real time, and they're contributing in real time, and they're moving forward in real time. And that is the difference. And when people say, what's the difference that you're a business coach? And I go, I struggle with that, because I'm not. And a lot of my peers are like, you're not a business coach. You will tell people that you work with teams, because that's a big difference. And that's what I think is a big difference, is sharing the learnings, being on equal footing, and not having that hierarchy in the room, and just being honest and putting it on the table and moving forward together as a team.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think it's been really interesting working with some clients. So, they come into the vision building particularly, and they kind of go, we've got our core values, we've got our core focus, we've got our plan. And then you actually go around the room and you ask, okay, great. So you've got 9 core values. What are those 9 core values? And nobody can actually answer it, or they can't use sort of the
They
same
pull it up on
language.
their phone. They
Yeah,
pull it
yeah,
up on their phone and they
yeah.
read them aloud, and they go, oh, I haven't seen those in a while.
Yeah. I always laugh. I had a team of 11 shareholders who came into one of the vision building days, and I said, oh, we've already got a plan. We've already got, we know exactly what we're doing. We're all on the same page. I said, great, makes my work even easier. Let's give it a go. So how many core values do you have? 9. Okay, let's go around there. We've got 11 people who are completely invested in this company as shareholders. Let's hear those core values. And we got to 3, because they weren't really core values. They were just almost like a tick box that we've done our tick box. We've got our core values. Yep. Next, moving on to it. And then they had this, we call it the 10-year target, but it was a whole paragraph. And it's like, how can you clearly articulate that and have everybody in the organization all understand where we're headed? So yeah, I love it when we get those sort of aha moments. We can take all of that and we don't do anything but facilitate in the room, but the team basically distills it down to that real core essence of the business.
I think, the one thing I always loved about revisiting, the 5 dysfunctions, Patrick
Yep.
Lencioni, is that
Yeah, I love him.
most of the times leadership teams are not working as a team. And they're all very strong. They're very successful and knowledgeable in their area of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
But they're running their own race. They're not aligned, and they're not working as a team. And it's such a missed opportunity, because we know that if they all got in a room and started working together and, rowing the boat from the same perspective and understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses and how they could help each other, wow, just that momentum you can achieve. So it is true. I think people get a little bit defensive. They say leadership teams aren't always necessarily operating as a team.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you tell them what a team looks like and remind them, when we were on a team, there was not one person. It's the Michael Jordan and the coach that took the basketball team to 11 championships, because there wasn't one player. He was all about the team. So yeah, that's always a reminder that leadership teams are strong personalities, and they've achieved a lot to get there. Then it's relearning how to be part of a team.
Yeah, and getting that trust together again. Yeah, cool. So tell me, yeah. Do you have a favorite EOS tool?
Listen to me. Like I said, I'm a big fact finder, so I'm a
Yes.
scorecard. Like I love the scorecard, because the truth is in the numbers. Everything else is a story. When you come into a room and the famous meetings of everyone goes around the table and talks about, the reality is that's really great, but where are the numbers? What are we watching? What are we keeping an eye on? How are we tracking? So for me, I'm always amazed when I come into businesses and they're like, oh, we'll get the numbers from the accountant at the end of the month. And I go, oh, okay. So what do we have even from last month? And they don't necessarily have it in an organized manner. And that's not unusual. It's really typical. But I can tell you that the reason, back to my big proud moment of winning the Entrepreneur of the Year award, is because in 2006, 2005, we at that point had opened 4 locations. So we were in New York, we had opened LA, San Francisco, um, New York, LA, San Francisco, and we were about to open in London. And it was really a point at which we were trying to make sure that we had a really great dashboard of activity.
Yep.
And I was like, we should do this fun thing and have it like the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, that we had these dashboards, these monitors in every office, and every 15 minutes it updated 7 key metrics. So everyone in New York saw what LA was doing and San Francisco, and it was like such real-time knowledge, so front of mind on what is the most important thing that gets us where we want to go. It's these things. It's not that call and it's not this. It's these 7 things that matter most in the business. So we were communicating that to everybody, and they were all seeing what each other was doing. And that's really what a big key factor that won us that award is, because we were in staffing, but we looked like we were operating on the New York Stock Exchange, because we had innovative business intelligence tools everywhere, just saying, keep your eye on the prize, and this is what's important. So when I saw the scorecard, I was like, they're speaking my language. Like, it's not just me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would probably be my number one, is that's a game changer. Like, level 10 meetings are always probably the biggest growing pain for clients. But the scorecard to me is what tells me they're absolutely running their business and the business is not running them. And it's the metrics that are these the measurables? Like, it takes a while. I'm sure you go through the thing and go, yeah, these are nice numbers, but does that really tell us? Is that a true indicator? If we want to get there, watching this, is that going to make a difference? And it's really getting to the root metric or the root measurable that says, really, this is what's going to be the trailing indicator that will tell us that we will get to 7 locations, or we'll be able to own that manufacturing building. So you want to make sure that they're just not putting numbers down to do their homework, because these are like out of the box numbers accountants and CFOs will put down. It's like, but those aren't trailing indicators to what we just said we want to achieve in 1 year and 3 years and 10 years, and making sure that they're tying back to each other. So yeah, that's my favorite.
I love it. And I think you've made a really valid point. Often people haven't got this stuff at hand really easily, and then they feel a bit embarrassed that they haven't been watching it. But it's just about actually getting clear that you do need to have it, and then working through it. And it can take, 3 to 6 months to actually get a scorecard that really works for you and really gives you the right numbers, sometimes longer. So I think, even just taking the first step and getting something up there that may not be the right numbers gets you to start thinking about what are the right numbers and how do we actually start to integrate those into the business. Yeah.
And the false sense of false economy on revenue numbers.
Yep.
It's like, that's great, but where's the profit, and where's the cost of sales, and where are your margins? And that's where they kind of go, gosh, I don't even know what our highest margin product is and what our lowest margin. And you start opening those ways of thinking, and they get why they're working hard and not seeing the fruits of their labor. Yep. So it's that you start uncovering some false economies that are out there, which is, but we did 5 million. It's like, but you made 7% profit. We can do better. Let's unpack this, and let's make sure that we're watching, profit margins, cost of sales, and the biggest, hairiest, cash flow drags that are out there.
And I think that's the point too, is like, it's better to actually be seeing these and looking and finding these kind of anomalies and going, okay, what can we do about it, rather than living in sort of almost cloud cuckoo land, kind of going, yay, we got great revenue. Yay, we got great revenue. Oh, we didn't make any profit.
But that terrible secret that it's like, but I'm still driving the same car I did 15 years ago, and I'm paying my employees, and there's nothing left for me. That's real. That is so real. And it's something that they do not want to necessarily share or come to terms with. It's like, no, we can change this. This is the opportunity. So, but that's very real, is companies and the right people that put their people first, and they pay them before they pay themselves, but then they realize there's not much left over. and they're working really hard, but it's time to work smart.
Mm, completely agree. Oh gosh, we could talk about, the EOS tools. I love them all, but you're right. I mean, the level 10 meeting, the scorecard, they all are absolutely game changers. Sadly, we can't talk all day because we are on a podcast and we have limits, which is sad but true. So we're going to have to wrap it up. But can you just give us, the 3 top tips? I know you mentioned earlier your first tip, which was around never losing sense of your why, your purpose. Yeah. What else do you have for? Yeah.
They come down to, it comes down to even just what your parents used to tell you is, you don't know if you don't try. So it doesn't have to be perfect. I always say good enough is good to go.
Mm,
Just go. Just put your toe in the water. Put your foot in the water.
mhm,
Progress over perfection, and that's the other one. And again, you can't do it all, and you shouldn't do it all. In fact, that's not the most strategic approach. So, when you find your courage or your confidence, which is low, borrow some. Go seek it out.
mhm.
Listen to a podcast of people that have gone before you. Listen to Deb's series of podcasts. Read a book. Talk to somebody. Talk to a mentor or an advisor, or seek out somebody and just borrow it. It's okay. You're not supposed to be able to do it all.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my, keep an eye on your why with a personal scorecard. Why did I do this? Why would I move to another country when I've got a thriving business? Well,
Mm,
because this is what's important to me, to us, to our family. And that's irreplaceable.
yep.
So yeah, good enough is good to go.
Yep.
You can't do it all. Just make sure you share the load, and have a personal scorecard that helps you keep an eye on your why.
Mm, I love it. Thank you so, so much. I love the idea of borrowing confidence as well. I mean, it's absolutely true. You don't have to. There's many different resources you can tap into, and people are always really willing to help. So reach out and just let somebody know. Be a bit vulnerable and say, "Hey, look, I'm struggling a bit here. Can you give me a hand?" Especially somebody who's been there before you,
Yeah.
experienced the
What
same
would you
things.
do? What have
I
you
would.
done?
Yeah. I
What
mean,
would you do? What have you done in this situation? People love to tell you their
mm,
stories, and it
absolutely, they
helps.
do.
And when you don't have the energy or the confidence, it's really nice to be following along someone else's and get inspired. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, great. Hey, if people want to talk more to you, because I mean, we know that you are absolutely passionate about EOS. You've got a lot of experience in terms of running business, an award-winning entrepreneur as well. How do they get in contact with you, and what's the process for wanting to engage with you?
I'm all about a conversation. It's, 30, 60, or 90 minutes. So it's just a matter of going to my website, or actually just email me directly. I'm very accessible. And it's Sheilah, Sheilah, at bxcollective.com.au. I'm sure it'll be on your um,
Podcast thingy,
yeah,
yeah, whatever it's
podcast
called.
profile.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's all about just having that initial conversation. I'm not
yeah.
necessarily about a form as much as I love technology. It's really having a conversation, and I make it quite approachable and easy and comfortable. But
Mm,
it's just starting with a chat
yeah.
and seeing what you need, how I can help, and if it's a fit.
Love it, love it. Okay, look, Sheila, always love talking to you. So pleased we got to catch up in person, just a couple of weeks ago. Looking forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your wisdom. Really appreciate it. Look forward to catching up again soon.
Thanks for doing what you do. You do it really well. It's a pleasure.